When most people hear the name Achilles, they think of a vulnerable heel. But in the original text of the Iliad, Homer never mentions a poisoned arrow hitting his foot. Achilles' actual vulnerability is internal, an explosive, volatile anger that threatens to destroy his own army from within. This is the story of the ancient world's most effective soldier and the chaos that follows when he simply refuses to do his job. At this point in the story, the Greeks have spent 9 years camped on the beaches of Troy. They have the numbers and the equipment, but their ultimate weapon is Achilles. He is a fighter so skilled that his mere presence on the field usually ends the battle before it starts. Yet, as the Trojans prepare a massive counterattack, Achilles is sitting in his tent. King Agamemnon insulted him by seizing his war prize, and in response, Achilles has withdrawn his support. The Greeks' strongest asset is now useless, sidelined by a single man's refusal to overlook a personal slight. Without Achilles, the Greek defense is failing. The Trojan prince Hector is leading a surge that has pushed the Greeks all the way back to their own ships. If the ships burn, the Greeks have no way home. Hector fights because he has to. He is the defender of Troy, a leader who derives his strength from the survival of his people rather than his own reputation. Before the battle, Hector stops to see his wife and infant son at the city gates. He removes his bronze helmet because the horsehair plume frightens the child. He knows he is likely walking towards his death, but he accepts the risk to protect his family. While Achilles sits in isolation to nurse his ego, Hector stands at the front of his army to preserve his community. The war is no longer a simple contest of strength. It has become a test of which man's motivation will endure, the one who fights for himself or the one who fights for everyone else. By the time the Trojans reach the Greek ships, the situation is critical. Patroclus, who is Achilles' closest companion, realizes that the army needs the image of Achilles, even if they can't have the man. He begs to wear Achilles' famous armor into battle to terrify the enemy. The ruse works. When the Trojans see the gleaming armor, they believe their nightmare has returned, and they break into a retreat. Patroclus drives them back across the plain, saving the fleet from destruction. But the deception fails at the walls of Troy. Hector realizes this isn't Achilles. He meets Patroclus in single combat and kills him, taking the armor as a trophy. Achilles stayed out of the war to spite his king, but his inaction ended up costing him the life of his best friend. The person he was trying to protect through his pride is the one he ultimately lost. When Achilles hears of the death, his stubbornness vanishes, replaced by a singular focus on revenge. He ignores the insults of Agamemnon and the politics of the camp. His only goal now is the death of Hector. Achilles returns to the field with a ferocity that shocks both armies. He is so relentless that he chokes the local river with the bodies of his enemies, eventually forcing the river god itself to rise up and fight him. Outside the gates of Troy, the duel finally happens. Hector is the city's last defense, but he is no match for Achilles' grief-driven speed. Achilles strikes a fatal blow through a gap in the armor, the very armor Patroclus had been wearing. Hector's death doesn't satisfy him. Achilles ties the body to his chariot and drags it through the dust around the city walls, day after day. He has his revenge, but he still finds no relief from his pain. He has won the battle and killed his rival, but he remains trapped in his own bitterness. The violence has stopped the enemy, but it hasn't quieted his grief. Late one night, a lone, elderly man crosses the battlefield. He avoids the sentries and enters Achilles' tent, surprising the warrior in the dark. This is King Priam of Troy. He has come to beg for the return of his son's body so he can give Hector a proper burial. He kneels and kisses the hands that killed his children. Priam asks Achilles to remember his own father, Peleus. He describes how Peleus is likely waiting at home, hoping for a son who will never return, just as Priam is now doing. For the first time, Achilles stops seeing the Trojans as targets. He looks at the king and sees a grieving father, no different from his own. The common experience of loss bridges the gap between them. The man who spent weeks desecrating a corpse stops. He reaches out, lifts the elderly king to his feet, and the two enemies weep together in the quiet of the tent. Achilles gives the body back. He orders his servants to wash and clothe Hector, and he promises to hold back the entire Greek army for 12 days so Troy can bury their prince with honor. Achilles spent the entire war trying to master the battlefield through force, but his final, most significant act is an act of restraint. He chooses to set aside his own anger to offer mercy to an enemy. This leaves us to decide, who is the real hero of the story? Is it the warrior who can defeat any man in combat, or the man who chooses to protect his family and city, even when he knows he will lose? The Iliad suggests that real strength isn't found in the ability to destroy. It's found in the capacity for compassion, even in the middle of a war.